In the heart of the glittering Manhattan skyline, high above the city's pulsing heartbeat, lived Rose, a stunning, bright young woman of high society. Her penthouse, adorned with opulence and decadence, was the envy of all who knew her. Yet there was a secret that dwelled behind its luxurious door. Rose was deeply in love with a man named David. He was her everything, her confidant, her partner in adventure, and the love of her life. But David was not like any other man. He was a skeleton. To Rose, he was real, and they lived a life of romance and enchantment. They would go out on dates, strolling through the moonlit streets of New York, dining at the finest restaurants, and dancing under the stars. He treated her like a queen, always laughing, whispering sweet nothings into her ear, holding hands and making her feel like the most cherished woman in the world. But in reality, David was no longer among the living. He had passed away a little over a year ago, succumbing to a violent illness that had taken him from Rose in their very home, the place where they had shared countless memories and dreams. And yet, despite all of Rose's love and care, David had succumbed to his illness, leaving her heartbroken. It was unfair. The grief was too much for her to bear, and she couldn't let go of him. So she kept him. In her mind, David was alive. She cleaned him up, dressed him in elegant suits, fed him exquisite meals, and even slept beside him, snuggling up tenderly with his bones. She adorned herself in the most alluring garments, believing it was for him, even dressing in her most seductive attire for him, always hoping to make him smile. When she decided to drive out of the city, she'd take him to places, carefully placing him in the car and covering him as though he were just asleep, never being able to be away from her darling David for too long. David had no family, his wealth private and known to only a few. No one questioned his absence, and Rose had told her friends and family that they had decided to part ways shortly after his death. One telling day, Rose's dear friend Violet, sensing Rose's lingering pain and isolation since her breakup with David, decided to throw her a surprise birthday party. She used the key Rose had entrusted her with for emergencies some time ago to prepare for the celebration. Violet was unassuming of what lay ahead. Rose returned home late that cold, ending to October evening, as she had decided to spend her birthday with David by the water. As Rose arrived at her penthouse, lovingly cradling David's bones, she was ready to enjoy the lavish dinner with her beloved that she had meticulously prepared very early in the morning before leaving out for most of the day. Rose walked in and turned on her living room lights. Her grand entrance met with a stunned silence, then gasps of horror and disbelief. Violet's face turned pale, her eyes fixed on the skeletal figure in Rose's arms. The truth hung heavy in the air, suffocating the room. David was long gone, and Rose's world had crashed along with her mental faculties. Her friends and loved ones, once joyful and eager to celebrate, now stood with their mouths agape. Then the screaming began. The room erupted into chaos, filled with horrified gasps and screams. Violet, who had organized the party out of genuine love and concern for her friend, was now faced with a nightmare she could never have predicted. Rose looked around, her eyes wide with confusion and sadness. She couldn't comprehend their shock. To her, David was real. The party she had imagined was for the two of them, a continuation of their everlasting love story. And so, in her grand penthouse in Manhattan, in the company of friends and family, Rose's surreal love story with a skeleton reached its chilling climax, leaving everyone in attendance stunned and horrified, their lives forever changed by the shocking secret she had held on to for far too long. And so, in that beautiful grand penthouse high above Manhattan, in the company of those that cared for her most, reality and illusion collided in a chilling revelation. Rose's surreal love story with a skeleton reached its chilling climax, leaving everyone in attendance stunned and horrified, their lives forever changed by the shocking secret she had held on to for far too long. All of the money and popularity in the world could never replace true love. Rose's mind had taken her on a journey of love and devotion, leaving her crazy. Quite literally crazy, but they say love is crazy, right? In the heart of New York's bustling Chinatown, in a tiny, dimly lit studio apartment where he lived alone, dwelled a peculiar soul named Daniel. At 28 years old, he was known for his quiet, bookish, introverted demeanor and somewhat eccentric ways. With a mop of thick, unruly brunette hair and a stature that towered over most, Daniel was handsome in an offbeat way and of an average weight for a man, though he never saw himself that way. His days were consumed by his job as a bike courier, weaving through the chaotic streets of the city that never slept, weaving in and out of the chaos with an uncanny grace. He was, in many ways, a part of the city's heartbeat, unnoticed and inconspicuous, but recognition was never the goal for Daniel. He simply enjoyed the free feeling of riding and looked forward to going to work every day so much so that he was always happy to pick up extra shifts whenever they became available. Each week, without fail, he had a particular delivery to an old, regal, statuesque building in the busiest district in the city. It was there he first encountered Trish, a super cute and bubbly girl that worked at the front desk of the building, who always managed to make him nervous. Every time he saw her friendly face, his palms would sweat, his tongue would tie itself into knots, and he was wrought with anxiety. Trish made this particular weekly delivery very special for him. She definitely made his heart race. One fateful day, as Daniel stood in the building's shadow, clutching a package tightly, Trish, who had been previously engrossed in her phone, got up from her desk and sauntered up to him with a playful grin. For a moment, Daniel got excited. She usually didn't approach him. The encounter felt like a serendipitous opportunity for Daniel to finally engage with her. Maybe this was their time. Before he could speak, Trish beat him to it, quipping, "Hey there, Daniel, I swear, you must be doing some extra snacking lately. I see you've got a tiny pudge growing there," she teased, pointing to his stomach, not thinking much of her offhanded comment. Trish laughed and continued talking, her attempt at flirting failing miserably and falling on the now deaf ears of a broken Daniel. He heard nothing more. Her flippant words were arrows shot through his heart. Her decree stung and burrowed deep into Daniel's psyche. He was absolutely crushed and shattered. The girl he pretty much loved saw him as ugly, he thought to himself, and he felt like a monster in human flesh. In his quiet, self-reflective moments, filled with the deafening cries of self-loathing, he began to scrutinize himself in the mirror. seeing flaws that only he could see. The image of that small Pudge became a grotesque monstrosity in his mind. Determined to rid himself of this imagined imperfection, Daniel resolved to stop eating altogether. Days turned into weeks, and he withered away, his once tall figure becoming a wispy frame. As Daniel's obsession with his body grew, he watched himself in the mirror every morning and night, tracing the lines of his ribs and bones. The looking glass revealed to him a gaunt face, sunken eyes, and an emancipated body that was now nothing more than skin stretched over protruding bones. He was no longer recognizable. His once healthy physique was withering away, and he transformed into a living skeleton, all in time for the upcoming Halloween. He no longer had the strength to ride his bike through the city streets, but an unnatural determination drove him to keep delivering packages to all of his stops, all except one. He had ceased dropping off packages to Trish's building for fear that she would make more crude observations and comments. He couldn't take any more scrutiny, nor did he want to disappoint her. His studio apartment became a mausoleum of silence, filled only with the echoes of his own weakening breaths. The world outside seemed to pass by, unaware of the tragedy unfolding within those walls. As Halloween approached, the city transformed, adorned with ghoulish decorations and the promise of otherworldly encounters. Unbeknownst to the revelers, a true specter roamed Chinatown. Daniel, now little more than a living ghost, drifted through the streets. He often thought about Trish, but he never saw her again. On that frightful night, as children giggled and adults reveled in their eerie costumes, Daniel's emaciated form wandered through the labyrinthine alleys. His sunken eyes stared hollowly at the festivities, a phantom of his former self, a bag of bones, and as the clock struck midnight, Daniel stood alone, a ghostly figure in the heart of a city that never stopped to notice until it was too late. The story of the peculiar, quiet man with the haunted soul became another whispered legend, a chilling tale that would linger long after the echoes of Halloween had faded.